Robert's Rebellion. Robert's Rebellion, also known as the War of the Usurper, was one of the last great civil wars among the great houses of Westeros that took place approximately 17 years before the War of the Five Kings begins, and lasted about 1 year, 2, if one counts the assault on Dragonstone as the final engagement of the conflict. It was sparked by the execution of Rickard and Brandon Stark by the Mad King. Aerys II Targaryen was king of the Undulls and the first men and the last member of House Targaryen to sit on the Iron Throne. The king is nicknamed the Mad King because his reign became increasingly erratic and murderous. Consequently, tensions between House Targaryen and several other great houses began to rise. The brutal fallout from Prince Rhaegar's alleged abduction of Lyanna Stark saw many noble houses in the realm rebel against his rule. In truth, however, Lyanna had not been kidnapped, she had eloped with Rhaegar, who had the High Septon issue an annulment to his marriage with Elia Martel. Lyanna was the daughter of Rickard Stark, Warden of the North, and betrothed to Robert Baratheon, the Lord Paramount of the Stormlands. House Stark and House Baratheon were the first to protest Rhaegar's actions. Brandon Stark demanded justice from Aerys in person. Aerys had him arrested for treason and then offered to ransom him to his father Rickard. Aerys summoned Rickard to court and, when he arrived, publicly and very brutally executed both father and son. The brutal murder of Brandon and Rickard engendered much sympathy for the rebels and many houses joined their cause. The Rebellion. Jon Arryn was the defender of the Vale, the Warden of the East and a respected nobleman. Both Rickard's second son Eddard Stark and Robert were fostered with him as children and became close friends. When Aerys demanded that Eddard and Robert be turned over to the king's justice, Lord Jon refused and raised his banners in revolt. The rebels forged an alliance with House Tully through marriage, with Eddard married to Catelyn Tully, who previously was to marry Brandon, and the then middle-aged Jon to the young Lisa Tully. Stannis Baratheon fought for his elder brother Robert during the war. Aerys used his allies in House Tyrell to besiege Stannis at Storm's End for much of the war. Stannis's force was rescued from starvation by the smuggler Davos, who brought a ship full of onions and fish into the castle. Rhaegar was killed during the fighting at the Battle of the Trident, slain by Robert himself. The site of his death is now called the Ruby Ford because it is believed to be scattered with rubies from the fallen prince's armor. 279 AC, in response to the king's murder of Rickard and Brandon Stark, the new Lord of Winterfell, Eddard Stark, raises the banners of the North. Robert Baratheon, Lord of Storm's End and betrothed to Lyanna, joins the rebellion, raising the banners of the Stormlands. Lord Jon Arryn of the Vale, a mentor to both Robert and Eddard, does the same. The Stark, Tully, and Arryn armies begin gathering north of the Trident, but Robert's forces are cut off far to the south. Leaving his brother Stannis to hold Storm's End, Robert marches his army northwest through enemy territory. Lord Mace Tyrell continues to besiege Storm's End for a full year. Robert is defeated at the Battle of Ashford by Tyrell forces loyal to the king, but later joins up with the Northern and Vale armies at the Battle of the Bells. The combined rebel army crosses to the north side of the Trident. Both sides consolidate for a major showdown. Lord Hoster Tully of Riverrun, who had planned to marry his daughter Catelyn to Brandon Stark, instead agrees to marry her to Eddard in exchange for his support in war. In addition, Hoster marries his second daughter Lisa to Jon Arryn to shore up the alliance. All four are wed in a double marriage ceremony at Riverrun before the rebel armies depart once again. 280 AC, Prince Rhaegar leads a royalist army to directly engage the rebels, but is defeated at the climactic Battle of the Trident, in which he is killed in personal combat by Robert himself. 280 AC, realizing that rebel victory is imminent, King Aerys sends his remaining young son Viserys and his pregnant wife Queen Rhaella to the safety of the ancestral Targaryen fortress, Dragonstone. 280 AC, with Rhaegar dead, lords who had been undecided about which side to join now abandon the Mad King. Lord Tywin's army arrives at King's Landing allegedly to defend the city, but once the gates are opened the Lannisters brutally sack the city. Aerys too is killed by Jaime Lannister, his own Kingsguard, for which Jaime becomes known as the Kingslayer. Sack of King's Landing. It was in this final hour that Tywin Lannister decided to join the conflict. He marched with a large force to King's Landing and asked that he and his bannermen be allowed into the city to aid in its defense. Aerys made the mistake of trusting his old friend and ordered the gates opened. The moment the Lannister host had entered, the sack of King's Landing ensued. Seeing that he was doomed, Aerys decided to ignite several caches of wildfire placed throughout the city and burn King's Landing to the ground, but was slain by Ser Jaime Lannister. His final words were, "Burn them all." Aerys had kept Rhaegar's wife Elia of House Martell and her children in King's Landing to ensure the Martells' loyalty during the conflict, regarded by most to be royal hostages. During the sacking, Elia was raped and murdered by Gregor Clegane on the orders of Tywin. Both of her children were also killed. Robert's Ascension. Robert laid claim to the Iron Throne because he had been the first to take up arms and had killed Prince Rhaegar personally. Robert was also the only rebel leader to have a blood link to the Targaryens, as his mother had Targaryen blood. The other leaders of the rebellion agreed to bend the knee. Robert was devastated by Lyanna's death, but married Cersei Lannister as a show of gratitude to her father, joining his cause late in the conflict and delivering the capital of King's Landing to him. Tywin remained the Warden of the West. Robert named Jon Arryn as his hand, while Eddard took his father's role as Warden of the North. House Tyrell, House Martell and House Greyjoy swore fealty to Robert to retain their pre-war positions, maintaining the Seven Kingdoms under their new royal house. Aftermath. The pregnant Queen Rhaella fled to the Targaryens' ancestral seat on the island of Dragonstone. She was accompanied by her youngest son, Viserys. Rhaella died soon after giving birth to Daenerys. The children were taken into exile in the free cities by loyal retainers. Stannis went on to conquer Dragonstone and was made Lord of Dragonstone. Unknown to most, after the skirmish at the Tower of Joy, Eddard found out that Rhaegar had another child, who was also named Aegon Targaryen, by his sister Lyanna. Eddard raised the child as his bastard son, renaming him Jon Snow, to keep him safe from Robert, since he would have surely killed Jon if he found out about his true parentage. In the books. In the A Song of Ice and Fire novels, this civil war took place between 16 and 14 years before the beginning of the novels. In the books, the conflict is also called the War of the Usurper by Targaryen Loyalists. The war was sparked when Prince Rhaegar Targaryen kidnapped Lyanna Stark. When Lyanna's father and eldest brother protested this act to King Aerys, he had them both killed in front of the entire royal court. Aerys then called for the heads of Lyanna's betrothed, Robert Baratheon, and her second brother Eddard Stark, who were under the care of Jon Arryn. Lord Arryn raised his banners in rebellion against these unjust acts, and sent Robert and Eddard back to their lands to rally their men. House Tully joined Robert's side after Eddard and Jon married Catelyn and Lisa Tully, respectively, while House Tyrell and House Martell supported the Targaryens. While House Tully did support Robert, the always fractious lords of the Riverlands were heavily divided in the war, and many stayed loyal to the Targaryens. House Lannister sat out most of the war, only entering, on Robert's side, after Robert killed Rhaegar at the Battle of the Trident, and his victory was a foregone conclusion. The rebellion climaxed with the Battle of the Trident, when the rebel armies destroyed the royalist host and killed Prince Rhaegar. Lannister forces, apparently having decided to support the king, arrived at King's Landing to help defend the capital, but then turned on the Targaryens, brutally sacking the city and killing Rhaegar's children. Aerys' other heirs, Viserys and Daenerys, were spirited to safety across the sea by Targaryen loyalists before the garrison of Dragonstone, where the two children were being kept for their safety, could hand them over to Robert. House Tyrell, whose main force had been held up in a lengthy siege at Storm's End, proclaimed loyalty to Robert soon after the sacking of King's Landing, when Eddard arrived with an army to relieve the siege. In the aftermath of the war, it was discovered that Lyanna Stark had died, so Robert married Cersei in thanks for her father delivering him victory and to secure an alliance between the two houses. Elia Martel's brutal murder by the Lannisters during the sack of King's Landing earned them the lasting enmity of the Martells. As a result of Elia's unnecessary and easily avoidable murder, Dorne became a hotbed of pro-Targaryen sentiment, and it took lengthy negotiations on the part of Jon Arryn for them to grudgingly swear fealty to Robert. Similarly to the Lannisters, House Greyjoy remained neutral throughout most of the war, under the rule of Balon Greyjoy's father Lord Quellin. He had been a strong ruler, though by the rebellion his health was failing. Quellin was not particularly loyal to either side, so he simply wanted the Ironborn to wait out the war on the mainland. After Rhaegar died, however, his sons convinced him that they should side with the rebels while they still could, both to get a share of the plunder and to placate Robert, soon to be the new king. They were not yet sure if Tywin Lannister would side with the Targaryens, so most of the Iron Fleet stayed home to defend against possible attack from the Westerlands. Quellin himself led a raiding fleet of 50 ships to attack the west coast of the Reach. They raided some soft targets, weakly defended villages and towns, but the Reach's main army was focused to the east at Storm's End. At the mouth of the Mander, however, the Ironborn were attacked by a dozen Reach ships from the Shield Islands. They defeated them but lost a dozen of their own ships in the exchange, and Quellan died in the fighting. Balon then returned the fleet home. Overall it was a minimal, token gesture meant to please Robert, with absolutely no significant impact on the war. Characters in the main narrative of the novels have never even mentioned the Greyjoy's minimal activities in the war. Quellan's raiding is only known of through the World of Ice and Fire sourcebook. The Greyjoys had no deep allegiance to Robert, however. A few years later Balon attempted, unsuccessfully, to declare independence from the mainland in the Greyjoy Rebellion.
If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.